Welcome back to UnderCover, Waterproofing and Underbinning Secrets. This is the deep dive from us here at DJI Waterproofing. Today, we are really getting into something critical for every Toronto homeowner. Understanding the city's water history, how to figure out your specific flood risk, and importantly, how to use that $3,400 city subsidy to protect your home. You really can't discuss water issues in Toronto without looking back at the big storms. I mean, July 8th, 2013, that was immense.
Oh, absolutely. A massive wake-up call.
Over $850 million in insured damages. It actually became Ontario's most expensive weather disaster ever.
And triggered by, what was it, 126 millimeters of rain in just a couple of hours. Chaos.
Yeah.
And, we see the fallout from storms like that, maybe not that extreme every year, but we see flooding. And that's why we always stress this point. Even if your basement has never flooded, you're still potentially at risk.
Yeah.
That $850 million damage bill wasn't just one neighborhood. It was all over.
Right.
Understanding why that is, well, it goes back to how the city manages water, the history of it.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Where do we start? It has to be Hurricane Hazel, doesn't it? 1954. That feels like the ground zero moment.
That's absolutely the starting line. Hazel was, well, unprecedented, 285 millimeters over 48 hours.
Wow.
The devastation was just incredible. 81 lives lost tragically, 180 homes completely destroyed. We're talking over $1 billion in damage in today's money.
Billion.
Yeah, the Humber River, its flow rate apparently increased 168 times its usual spring volume. Just unimaginable amounts of water.
Yeah.
But the legacy of Hazel wasn't just the damage, it was the response. It forced revolutionary changes in thinking.
Like what specifically?
Well, the big one was the creation of the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, the TRCA. And they, along with the province and municipalities, brought in strict rules against building in high-risk floodplains. They actually bought up huge tracts of land, especially where damage was worst, like along Raymore Drive, turned destroyed neighborhoods into parkland, basically. Green space designed to handle future overflows.
That's fascinating. So those parks we see along the rivers aren't just parks, they're actually flood defense infrastructure.
Exactly. Engineered flood defense.
So if we jump forward to that 2013 storm, you can see those Hazel-era strategies working, right?
You really can, because that July 8th storm with 126 millimeters was actually more intense in a single day than Hazel's peak day, which was 121 millimeters.
Right.
But crucially, no drowning deaths in 2013. The floodplain restrictions keeping people and buildings out of the direct path of the river overflows, they worked.
Okay, but here's where it gets complicated for modern homeowners, isn't it? That 2013 storm didn't just flood the river valleys, it caused widespread basement flooding far from the rivers. This is that urban paradox you mentioned. We sort of solved the big river flooding problem, but our own development, all the pavement, the buried creeks, that created a new problem.
Precisely. It boils down to physics and, well, our infrastructure. When you pave over ground that used to absorb rain, you create what's called an impervious surface. Water that used to soak in slowly now just rushes off immediately. And where does it go? It rushes towards the lowest points, including storm drains and ultimately into the city's sewer system. And a lot of Toronto older areas, especially the former city of Toronto, still have combined sewer systems. Meaning one pipe carries both household sewage and stormwater runoff. Now imagine dumping 126 millimeters of rain onto square kilometers of concrete and asphalt, all draining into those combined pipes.
They just get overwhelmed.
Totally overwhelmed. They bottleneck. And when the pressure builds up, because the pipe can't handle the volume, it has nowhere to go but backwards.
Back up the pipes.
Right back up your home's drain connection, pushing that mix of stormwater and sewage into your basement. So the city's growth is literally putting pressure on the pipes beneath our feet.
That makes so much sense. So homeowners are facing two very different kinds of threats. We need to define those clearly.
Absolutely. Understanding the type of risk is key. First, you have riverine flooding. That's the classic scenario. Rivers, streams overflowing their banks.
Okay, like the Don, the Humber flooding.
Exactly. That's what the TRCA tracks and what their floodplain map viewer online shows you. If you live near a river, you must check that map.
Got it. What's the second type?
The second and often the more insidious type is urban flooding. This can happen miles from any river.
Right.
It's caused by those local drainage issues we just talked about, the municipal sewers getting overloaded during intense rain, or even just surface water pooling on poorly graded properties and finding its way in.
And the crucial point here is
the TRCA map, the one showing riverine risk, it doesn't show this urban flooding risk. It can't. That risk is hyper-local.
Okay, that is a really important distinction. But it creates a problem, right? If I'm nowhere near a river and the main flood map doesn't apply to me, how do I figure out my risk for this sneaky urban flooding? How do we assess that?
It takes a few steps. You have to combine the bigger picture city data with a close look at your specific property.
Okay, so as the pros doing this every day, we have a pretty clear action plan for listeners, for you. 3 key steps. Step 1, go to TRCA.ca, find the floodplain map viewer. Check if your property falls within those riverine flood risk zones. If it does, honestly, robust protection isn't optional, it's essential. Step 2, then check the City of Toronto's own map. It's called the Basement Flooding Protection Program map. This map shows areas where the city has studied or is planning sewer system upgrades specifically because of known flooding issues. If your neighborhood is on that map, the city acknowledges a higher risk.
That's a big indicator.
Step 3. This is where we come in often.
Yeah.
A detailed, property-specific assessment. We're looking for those local red flags. Is your lot graded away from the house or towards it? Are there visible cracks in the foundation? Critically, do you have the right protective devices like a backwater valve, and is it working? These little things often trigger the flood when the bigger system is stressed.
And we just saw a really stark example of this, didn't we? July 16th, 2024. Another heavy storm, about 100 millimeters.
I remember that day. Phones ringing off the hook.
Over 700 basement flooding calls reported to the city. And that event really brought something interesting to light, something we're calling the Great Sump Pump Paradox of 2024.
Paradox? What do you mean?
Well, anecdotally, and based on the calls we were getting in quite a few cases, homes with sump pumps seem to flood just as badly, sometimes even worse, than homes without them.
Wait, seriously, how is that possible? Isn't the pump supposed to prevent flooding?
It is, under normal conditions.
Yeah.
But think about capacity versus volume. Your typical residential sump pump, the standard ones most people have, they usually sit in maybe a 30-inch deep pit and have a small, like 1.5-inch discharge pipe.
Okay.
They're designed to handle, seepage, water rising slowly from the weeping tiles around the foundation, a few gallons an hour, maybe.
Right.
But during that July storm, it wasn't a trickle. It was like a constant flow, sometimes for 4, 6, even 8 hours straight, overwhelming the weeping tiles and pouring into that pit.
So the pit just filled up.
Exactly. The little pump was running nonstop, but the inflow was greater than the outflow capacity of that tiny pipe. The pit filled, overflowed, and spilled right out onto the basement floor. It simply couldn't keep up.
And power outages too, right? That was a factor.
A huge factor. If the pump didn't have a battery backup system, the moment the power went out, it was useless anyway. Game over.
So this really hammers home the point. Just having protection isn't enough. It has to be the right kind of protection, sized correctly, installed properly, and ideally with backup power.
Absolutely.
Which leads us to the solutions we offer, the comprehensive waterproofing approaches.
Right. For many existing homes, especially with seepage through walls or floors, we look at interior waterproofing. And that's more than just slapping on some sealant.
Much more.
It involves installing things like interior drainage channels around the basement perimeter, specialized wall membranes, systems designed to capture any water that does get through the foundation and channel it safely to a properly sized and reliable sump pump system.
And then there's the gold standard, especially if the main issue is external water pressure or venous water.
Exterior waterproofing. Yeah, that's the most robust. It involves careful excavation around the foundation down to the footings.
Right.
Then applying a high-quality waterproof membrane directly to the foundation walls and installing or upgrading the weeping tile system at the footing level. It stops water before it even gets a chance to touch your foundation. It manages the water outside.
Okay, so these are serious solutions, but they sound like they could be expensive. Let's talk about the cost and, crucially, the help that's available.
Yes, the City of Toronto's Subsidy program. It's a game changer for affordability.
The Basement Flooding Protection Subsidy program. They're basically offering up to $3,400 per property to help homeowners install these protective devices.
It's significant help. Let's break it down. For installing a backwater valve, that's the device that stops sewage from backing up into your home from the city's sewer, the subsidy is up to $1,250, and that covers 80% of the eligible cost.
80%? That's huge.
It is. Then for sump pump installation, it's up to $1,750, again, covering 80% of the cost. And importantly, as we discussed, the city is looking at specifically including battery backup systems under this soon, which is great news given the power outage issue.
Good. That's needed.
And finally, if you need to disconnect your foundation drains from the sanitary sewer, what's called pipe severance and capping, there's up to $400 available for that.
So potentially $3,400 in total help. But what are the hoops people need to jump through? Is it complicated to get this money?
There are definite rules, but it's manageable, especially if you work with a qualified contractor like us. We guide our clients through it. First, you must use a contractor with a valid City of Toronto business license. We obviously have that.
Gotcha.
Second, for a backwater valve, you absolutely need a building permit from the city before work starts. No permit, no subsidy.
Okay, permit required.
And this is the most critical step people sometimes miss. A city inspector must see and approve the backwater valve installation before you cover it up with concrete or flooring.
Crucial. Don't bury the evidence before they see it.
Exactly. If they can't inspect it, you won't get the subsidy. Then you just submit the application with invoices within 1 year
Right.
of the work being done. We handle that paperwork side too.
So the bottom line here is getting this professional level protection done correctly and meeting all the city codes is actually incredibly affordable now because of this program. The cost of preventing a flood is way, way less than cleaning one up.
Night and day difference.
Okay, let's bring this home. What's the immediate action plan for you, the listener, maybe even this week? First, pull up those 2 maps online. TRCA map for river risk, city map for basement flooding study areas. Know your general zone. Second, take a walk around your own property. Look critically. Does the ground slope towards your house? See any cracks in the visible foundation? Little things matter. Third, dig out your home insurance policy. Read the fine print. Does it specifically cover sewer backup? Does it cover overland flood damage? Many standard policies don't or have low limits. You need to know.
Good point on insurance. And fourth,
Call us. DGI Waterproofing. Let's schedule a proper professional assessment. We can pinpoint your specific risks, explain the best solutions, and give you clear quotes for work that qualifies for that city subsidy.
and just to reiterate the cost difference one last time, think about it. The cost of prevention, let's say a backwater valve and a good sump pump system. After you get that maximum $3,400 subsidy back, your out-of-pocket cost might only be around $600, maybe a bit more, depending on the specifics.
Okay.
Now, the cost of cleaning up even an average basement flood, you're starting at maybe $4,000, but it very easily climbs to $10,000, $15,000 just for the cleanup and basic repairs.
And severe floods.
Severe floods, where you need significant restoration, mold remediation,
Yeah.
you can easily be looking at $20,000, $30,000, even $40,000 plus.
Yeah.
The prevention cost is truly a fraction of the potential cure cost. The City of Toronto is stepping up. They're planning to invest something like $4.5 billion over the next decade on upgrading stormwater infrastructure. That's massive. They're doing their part on the large scale. But that individual property-level protection, that's the crucial piece you control. It's the final line of defense to keep your own home, your biggest investment, safe and dry.
This has been really insightful. It connects everything from the historical lessons of Hazel right through to the very real risks, and thankfully, the solutions available today, including that vital city funding. Being prepared isn't just nice to have anymore in Toronto, it feels essential.
Absolutely. Please don't wait until you have water pooling on your basement floor to start thinking about this. Don't just assume the pump you have now is enough for the kind of storms we're seeing more frequently. That next big storm. It really isn't a question of if it's coming, is it? It's just a matter of when.
Take action now. Use the resources. Use that $3,400 subsidy. Give us a call at DGI Waterproofing. We're available 24/7 for emergencies, or just to schedule that assessment and get the ball rolling on protecting your home properly. Stay dry, Toronto. Our number is 647-483-2455. Again, that's DGI Waterproofing at 647-483-2455.